Yeah, so thanks for having me. Yeah, so like Ron said, so I super appreciate that thing because that was what launched Such As Is my speaking career. So Dan Pritchett, who was my partner in crime talking at the SV Forum 11 years ago, has gone on to do amazing things at eBay. He now works at Google running a bunch of great stuff at Maps. But we were sort of both architects at eBay, and at the time, eBay was like a big deal, less so now. I mean, particularly, I don't know, minus 5% at the end of the day, not so great for them if you watch their, the finances today. But it was a big deal, and eBay had never spoken before about their architecture or their practices before, so it was a bigger deal than it might otherwise have been, and it was great fun. And since then, Dan and I have both gone on to speak at lots of different conferences, and I co-organize a conference series called QCon, which is in San Francisco in November, and a bunch of other places around the world. So yeah. But yeah, thanks Ron for having me to talk about DevOps. So one of the attendees here asked, before I go in, can I define DevOps? I would love to be able to do that. I will give you my definition. I'll give you the three possible definitions, and I'll say which of the two I actually believe. So. Software, there are, as with many things, Agile included, DevOps, once you get the vendors in there, the software vendors are going to make it, DevOps means doing my tool. I actually don't personally subscribe to that model. So I'm actually not going to talk about any tools at all in this talk. If you want to, I hope this is like an interactive forum, so if you want to ask about the actual tools that we use at Stitch Fix where I work, or at Google or other places, happy to talk about them. Yeah. Yes, I will happily, I already saved them as a PDF on my machine, and I will give them, via email to Ron or whatever's the appropriate way to get them to you. So yeah, feel free to just listen and participate instead of take notes, I guess. Yeah, so very happy to talk about the tools and actually the technology, but I'm going to spend more time talking about culture and organization and process. Yeah, so one possible definition is whatever the vendor's tool is. I don't subscribe to that one. There's another thread of DevOps which is about empathy. So those of us who are old enough to, this is me too, remember a development practices where developers sit over here and operations sits over there. There's a big wall in between, maybe different buildings, and people hate each other across that divide. Definitely lived in that world. And so one aspect of DevOps, that thread that goes through it, is an empathy and a caring about, if I do something poorly on the developer side, the operations person's going to get woken up in the middle of the night, and if the operations person doesn't do their job, my product isn't as great as it could be. So, some empathy and some caring back and forth. I do believe that's an underpinning of DevOps, but I think DevOps is more than that. So my definition is a bit lean manufacturing techniques as applied to software. So what are ways that we can make both the development and the operations side more efficient, more effective? So you can think of it as agile, plus plus, or agile prime or something like that. So that's the way I look at it. Does that make sense or resonate or cool? So that's the background that answers the pre-question. All right, so I wanted to talk just super briefly about my background just for a minute or so, just so you know where I'm coming from, because I'm going to give some examples from a bunch of these places. So for the last year and a half, I've been VP of Engineering at Stitch Fix in San Francisco. So has anybody heard of Stitch Fix? I know one person that we talked about. Great, yeah, more than I expected, cool. Stitch Fix is an online clothing retailer, and our sort of claim to fame is, or secret sauce if you like, is combining the art in the form of actual humans that decide what clothes we will send in our boxes to our clients, and then machines in the form of algorithmic recommendations to those humans. So we believe that the humans couldn't be as good as they can be without the machines, and the machines can't be as good as they can be without the humans. So those two things together. And I will talk briefly about that just because it's interesting, but I won't bore you for more than a couple minutes on that. Before that, I was sort of a roving CTO as a service. So I helped a bunch of companies, startups in the Silicon Valley, larger companies in Europe and Asia, sort of do the kinds of things we're going to talk about here. So be better in terms of their engineering organizations, get it together in terms of their technology, that sort of thing. Before that, I was director of engineering at Google for Google App Engine. So App Engine is Google's platform as a service. If you're familiar with maybe Heroku or Cloud Foundry, those are other platforms as a service. I ran the engineering team for that, so that was a lot of fun. And then earlier in my career, I was chief engineer at eBay for about 6.5 years. And I spent a lot of time there, in particular on eBay's search engine, because at the time, 2004 when I arrived, eBay needed to build their own real-time search engine for reasons which I'm happy to discuss. But that was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot about how to work together between development and operations, how to build large-scale infrastructure, and so on. And if I didn't say, I do hope that this is much more of a seminar rather than a lecture, if that makes any sense. So if I'm up here just speaking for the whole time, I think that's going to be more boring for you and for me than it could be. So I'd love for you to interrupt me anytime with a question or a comment or whatever. Okay, so super briefly about Stitch Fix, just because it's not as familiar probably as eBay or Google. So Stitch Fix is like the opposite of the normal clothing retailer. So rather than going into a store, whether physical or virtual, and choosing your clothes, instead, what if you had an expert to do it for you? So you fill out what we call a style profile, a super detailed, like 80 or 100 question sort of survey about your price preferences, styles you like, are you a parent, what's your age, what's your height, what's your weight, do you like to flaunt your arms, do you like to hide your rear, all sorts of stuff that you would want to know, somebody would want to know in order to choose clothes for you, right? So if there's somebody in your life that is good at choosing clothes, what do they know about you? And we ask you to tell us that so we can choose clothes for you. So you fill out this style profile, we send you 5 hand-picked items in a box. So an actual human has selected those 5 items, you keep what you want, you return what you want, and you pay for only the things that you keep, and the shipping is free both ways. So, yeah, please.
Are the clothes that you're wearing now, are they chosen by Stitch?
Excellent, no, good. The Brooks Brothers shirt that I'm wearing predates my time at Stitch Fix, but the jeans are the most comfortable that I've ever worn. Stretchy jeans, a complete revelation. If you're a guy, find out about that, because it's amazing. I used to wear 505s, and it's night and day. And the shoes, we do have shoes, but these are shoes that predate Stitch Fix, but thank you for asking. Cool. So the thing that's interesting about Stitch Fix, which we won't touch on too much, but I'm happy to answer questions about, is we're big into data science. So we have about 100-strong engineering organization. We have almost 100, additionally, 100 data scientists and algorithm developers. So that ratio, as far as I'm aware, is actually completely unique in our industry. It's certainly unique in e-commerce and in retail, because I know all those companies. But as far as I'm aware, and I'd love to hear the counterexample, this isn't super aggressive about it, but I have yet to hear any other company that has, certainly at our size, that has this ratio. And what do we do with all those data scientists, right? We apply their intelligence to every part of the business. So the obvious example is the personalized recommendations we make on your behalf to the stylist, right? So the person who's choosing those 5 items to go in the box for you, we have actually scored every item in our inventory for you and computed a probability of purchase and showed those scores to the stylist. But we also apply those same techniques to buying. What clothes should we buy? Which warehouses should we put them in? What size breakdown? When should they arrive? All aspects of inventory management. We've got our own sort of traveling salesman problems in our warehouses, and we apply data science to that. Logistics optimization in terms of choosing shipping carriers and so on, et cetera, et cetera. So really any aspect of our business, we apply intelligence and data science to. Yeah?
So you have your own people stitch clothes and maintain an inventory?
So we do keep physical, so we're a physical business. We keep physical inventory in terms of where we get the clothes. Still the majority of our clothes are made by clothing vendors that other retailers would use. So some of the same vendors that you would find at Nordstrom or DKNY or at other standard clothing retailers. But we have started to do, and we are continuing to do more of what's called exclusive brands. So we go one step earlier in the supply chain and source. This is actually literally the term that they use. Take a position in the fabric. That's finance terminology, right? So we take a position in the fabric, we will buy, I don't even know, 10,000 yards of this floral fabric, and then we will contract with tailors essentially to make clothes out of that. But that's still a minority of our business. We do not stitch personalized items of clothing. That's a thing we could do someday, but we don't. So we're not like custom clothing for you, but we custom choose the clothing, if that makes any sense, right? So imagine that we have all the racks that are of clothing that are available kind of everywhere, and we choose from that. Does that make sense? Yeah, sure. We are absolutely profitable. We have been for 3 years. I used to, if we were having this 2 months ago, I couldn't tell you this, but there was a New York Times article which we, helped them write, and we made $730 million in revenue in 2016. So we are the 10th largest clothing retailer in the United States. Yeah.
So a user fills out all the information, the algorithm figures out what's best to choose for them, gives it to the stylist, and the stylist picks remotely wherever they are?
Yeah, so we have, right, so the question is like, sort of how does it work algorithmically and with the stylists? Yeah, so we have close to 6,000 employees overall, 3,500 of whom are these stylists, and they all work, for the most part, part-time and almost exclusively from their homes. So, yeah, so they will essentially shop on your behalf if you like. So, the internal application that they use is very much a shopping cart metaphor, exactly very familiar to somebody who's done any online shopping, which is probably all of us. Yeah, so what they see is that they see scores for you. So they see that, Randy has a 65% chance of keeping this shirt and a, 57% chance of keeping these pants and a, 42% chance of keeping these shoes. And they can find out why the algorithm made those choices and so on. Does that answer your question? Yeah. But they're all employees. They're not contractors, they're all employees. So we feel super strongly that, they get benefits and all that kind of stuff. And ditto our warehouse employees, they are all actual employees, but for the most part, part-time. Yeah, yeah?
Is there an average or percentage of stuff that's returned, like how accurate and how close are they?
Yeah, that's good. So there are two parts to it. Do people return things? Repeat the question. Yeah. Sorry, I'm terrible at that. The question was two parts. Does stuff get returned, and in some sense, how accurate are those predicted probabilities of purchase? So yes, the model. Our model assumes that you're going to return something. Like we would love for you to keep all 5 items, but we don't bank on that. If that makes any sense. And it's obviously proprietary, like what the average is, but it's not 5. I'd love for it to be 5, but it's super not 5. Much as we would like it to be. So we're expecting the shipping going both directions, et cetera. But the predicted probabilities of purchase are really good. Like our chief algorithm officer who used to run analytics and data science for Netflix, he shows a graph which is, what it should be is a straight line, a relationship between what was the predicted probability of purchase and what was the actual probability of purchase. It's this gorgeous, it's a scatter plot, but it's a gorgeous, straight, linear relationship, yeah. It's a data set, he used to do that at Netflix and do the recommender systems and Netflix Prize and all that. He says that he's never seen a data set that's so predictive. I don't know. We don't have like Google or Netflix scale of data. Because we're not collecting every second of your viewing a thing, but we have every piece of data we have is super valuable, right? We send you something and you choose to keep it, and you say, what did you think about the price, the style, the fit, the quality, and that's pretty much what we ask. If you return a thing, you also get to say what you thought about the style, the price, the quality, et cetera. And people, because it helps you, people do that. Does it make sense? Like people give us that data not because we had to beat them over the head with something or entice them. They can see that the more, we try to make it simple, but the more information they give us, the better that next box is going to be, and et cetera, et cetera. And the other, it's obvious, but just to say out loud, again from our chief algorithm officer likes to say, Netflix makes great recommendations, but we put money behind our recommendations. Do you know what I mean? Every single thing we send is hand-chosen, but also recommended. So 100% of our revenue comes from recommendations, and we believe them so strongly that we're willing to invest the shipping cost in sending it to you. So it's a pretty good forcing function for us to be pretty disciplined about it. Yeah, sure. Hi.
About the cost itself, if I buy, let's say, your example, like Brook Brothers or Men's Warehouse directly versus
Yes.
how much is the markup?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, so the Brooks Brothers, this shirt like I got from Brooks Brothers, and we don't sell Brooks Brothers shirts, but the general idea is some of the brands that we carry are brands you could find other places. For the most part, even when they are brands that the vendor will sell to other people, for the most part we have negotiated exclusive relationships. So this isn't a real example, but let's imagine that these jeans, like, they're made by a vendor that sells to other places, which is a true statement, but maybe we have an exclusive relationship so you can only get these jeans from us, something like that. And what's the markup? Yeah, obviously I can't tell you that, but the idea behind it is, for a bunch of aspects of clothing, you don't want the fastest and cheapest, right? Like for women in your lives, or the women that you are in the audience, think of how difficult it was to find jeans that fit, right? Or men, like, do you buy slacks? Like, do you buy the absolute cheapest ones? Because you could do that, right?